Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hello, beautiful friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am absolutely delighted to have you here. How are you doing? How is November treating you? It is a beautiful rainy day here at the Phineas Wright House. I am cozy in my office, having beautiful, expansive conversations with beautiful, fabulous women that are saying yes to themselves in big and small ways. Today, it is just a fantastic day. I am feeling really great about closing down the flower fields and the garden for this season. And I am really investigating. I was going to say leaning in, but that would communicate a little less resistance than what I would say. I am investigating this idea of rest. You know, the seasons were kind of just a decision I made when I lived in Southern California. And now that I'm in Massachusetts with actual seasons and with this beautiful opportunity to be a flower farmer, I'm much more mindful of what each season brings for this property. And I would say in the past that although I closed the flower fields down in November, that was not necessarily my invitation to rest. It was my invitation to, okay, now let's focus all of this energy into what needs to happen inside the house and inside my business. And now I'm so glad I can sit at my desk for as many hours as I sat on my lawnmower, and I'm going to get so much done. And I am in a process of investigating what rest looks like, and also gentleness and softness with myself about the ideas of rest. I have felt during times of reflection and meditation during my morning practice, this idea of it is safe to be at rest. And although I really feel a response in my body when I say that, sometimes it makes me start crying. Sometimes I get chills. I think it's really beautiful in concept. And my heart sings at the idea of that, but my head wonders, is it safe? Is it really safe to be at rest? And who is going to do all this if you're just sitting around doing nothing? And, what does rest even look like? So there's a little glimpse into what's going on in my internal world. And I just wanted to share that with you and just invite you to continue to breathe deeply and listen intently for what you need in this season, what your yes is in this season. And, I obviously ask that question every week on the podcast to our guest. And when I say in this season, I don't necessarily mean spring, summer, fall, or winter. I just mean in this season of life, whatever you're identifying this as, whatever your present moment is. And I would really love to hear what your yes is. And is that a new practice? Is it something that you're course correcting a bit, or have you landed on something and you are continuing in this practice of yes? I'm really eager to know. Oh, I wanted to tell you something else that was so reflective and not melancholy, but low in my voice. And then I just remembered I wanted to thank you so much for the beautiful, expansive achievement that we've reached together of 40,000 downloads. And I know I mentioned it last week on the podcast, but I'm so grateful and so excited and really thankful for everyone who has rated and reviewed the podcast, who shared that with their friends. I would really appreciate if you continued to do that, and we can just grow this community even stronger, because we have fabulous stories and fabulous women to introduce you to. And today's guest is no exception. Today we have international speaker and violinist Diane Allen. She is a TEDx speaker and thought leader who speaks on increasing the meaning, joy, and fulfillment in one's work and life by accessing the flow state. As the author of Flow, Unlock Your Genius, Love What You Do, Diane shares her insights on how to harness the power of flow. Years before neuroscientists discovered the positive impact of the flow state, Diane had already experienced its transformative power in her own career as a violinist. Diane was the concert master of the Central Oregon Symphony for 15 years, a beloved violin teacher for 28 years, and author of the Fingerboard Workbook series for violin, viola, cello, and bass. It was her unique approach to getting into flow on demand that earned her a spot on the TEDx stage and features on TED, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, Associated Press, Boston Herald, Authority Magazine, and Thrive Global. Today, Diane is known for her experiential keynotes, training, and coaching programs that go beyond engagement, featuring her 3-step flow strategy system, which empowers people to get into their flow state, be in their genius, and love what they do. I am delighted and excited to share this beautiful conversation with Diane Allen. Diane, I am so excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is really fun. I've told my podcast community that I've somehow gotten on the radar of PR firms that are promoting new authors, and I have this gorgeous, brimming inbox full of new friends that I didn't even have to vet, which is so fun. And so many of these conversations, my listeners are getting to know the guest in real time as I'm getting to know the guest. And it's so fun. It's like a game show, or we just sat down on a plane next to each other,
Yeah.
and which I don't want to freak anyone out, because I say this all the time. If you want to start a business, you should sit next to me on a plane, because I have 1,000 ideas for you. But I am not that obnoxious person that starts that as soon as you sit down. That's when I watch TV, because I live on a small flower farm in New England and I don't get to watch TV. I don't make time for that. So when I'm on the plane, I tuck my earphones in right away and look for reruns of Grey's Anatomy, so I can be in my happy place. But if a conversation does get started, then I'm certainly there for it.
So tell us, Diane, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Wow. This season, that's like a loaded question.
You can answer it any way you desire.
If I think granular, right? Like in the moment this week, I would say I said yes to myself by confronting that my exercise and what I'm getting out of the exercise that I do, that I have been on a plateau for a very long time. And I have a friend who went to a place, I don't even know what to call it. It's kind of part workout place, but also there's coaching at the same time. So I did a trial and it's a yes. It is a way to get stronger without stressing your joints. It's very good, and it's only 20 minutes. You only have to go 20 minutes. I went yesterday, and I'm already feeling like, wow, yeah. Anyways, so saying yes to myself in that way, but I do believe that saying yes to yourself is the key to life. And
I
there's
agree.
so many levels of saying yes to yourself. And sometimes it just has to do with you choosing you first,
Mhm.
and not having any guilt or remorse, right? Like it's not selfish at all. It's you being you and you being your best self. And that's what I'm all about is, helping people to actually tap into not only their best self, but how can you get into a place where you're stretched to go beyond what you even imagine for yourself.
Right? Okay, I love everything that you are saying. There are not as many of us as I hope there will be as we continue to spread this message. Has this been a long held belief that you've had? Are you relatively new to this practice of choosing yourself? How has this played out for you?
Hmm. The first thought that I had was my parents. They always said yes to themselves. Both of my parents were very proactive about their health and well-being. Very. Like, back in the day when vitamin stores were new, it wasn't even health stores yet. They were like Vitamin Cottage or something like that. And my mom had her like, vitamin Bible that she would go in and she was trying to like help herself. So I think that I grew up in that culture. But I do believe that it is on so many levels that it you find um, more and more ways to say yes yourself, the better. Another thought that's popping into my head is I'm a violinist, I'm a professional speaker. And when I go and speak and I perform, I combine the two together. There's a story behind that, which I'll get to in a second. I was at an event for people who are in the caregiving business,
Hmm.
and I was talking about, the when you are in being your best self, you are saying yes to yourself. You are tapped into your unique signature strengths. And this woman said, I've been caregiving for 30 years. I don't even know who I am. Right? So I think that, and I did caregiving for 8 years. Okay, we're going deep now.
Let's go. I'm here for it.
So here's the deal. I had a Wendy and I know I had a tickle attack in my throat right before we started talking, so I'm like a little um,
Right? We all know it's throat chakra. You have something good to say.
something's going on. So
Right, we're
the
here for it.
so the thing is the violin, okay, classically trained violin, right? Full on career. Holding up a picture for those of you who are listening and are not seeing. Here's the orchestra I used to play in. I was the lead violinist of an orchestra, the concertmaster, full on career as a violinist. And yet, when my son was at the height of his teenage rebellion and deep depression, at the same time, my mom had Alzheimer's. And I found myself sitting on stage playing a Beethoven symphony without any emotion. I was zapped. I was like numb. My violin students started leaving me for other teachers. I took a year's leave from the orchestra. Didn't know what was going on. I just was not feeling it. Wendy, it got to the point where I quit. I sold my violin, my gorgeous antique violin that had been my voice, right? My musical voice for decades. Sold it, sold my entire music collection. I was like, I'm just going to focus on public speaking, which is my other love. And people were like, Diane, can you not marry the two together, play violin and speak? It's like, no, these two worlds will never collide, right? And the thing is that when the violin came back into my life, everything clicked. Everything clicked. And so when you think about that era when I was like, no, these two worlds will never collide, I was saying no to myself. Everybody else could see it. I refused to see it. So how I saw it was I was sitting in, it was a film festival. And for those of you who are familiar with Meow Wolf, they are a group of counterculture artists that created museums. They initially started out as a group of artists that were questioning everything about art. And so there was this documentary about them. Who's to say that this is art? Who's to say that this is not art? Who's to say that this art is valuable? Who's to say that this is not valuable? Who's to say that if we're going to run a business and build our own museum, that this is what leadership looks like? Who's to say that, we're employees? Like, they were questioning everything.
I love them.
I could not sleep that night. I was so stimulated by it. And in the morning, I could feel the power of the violin coming back into my life. And so I borrowed a violin, played a little Bach, no, played a pop tune, yes. And like Wendy, it took me 10 minutes to figure out that I wasn't done with the violin. I was done with classical music. But it was such a confusing time because of my son, my mom, right? Me, like it was just like a weird convergence of all of this stuff happening at the same time. It was very confusing. I thought that putting my flow on the back burner, right? The thing that nourishes me the most, the violin, right? I thought that was the right thing to do when I was taking care of my mom, right? To be self-sacrificing, right? And so anyways, when the violin came back, I borrowed a violin, realized, okay, it's not the violin, it's classical music. A week later, borrowed an electric violin. 6 weeks later, literally, I'm at a speaking engagement, combining the two, playing my own music. So like when it happened, when you say yes to yourself, things happen fast. That is what I experienced for myself. I went off on a tangent. I can't even remember what the question was.
Not a tangent, completely inspired, so beautiful. I could not agree more. It's all of it true. And it is this allowing, it's opening yourself up to what is meant for you. And you've been placing all of those desires into this vibrational escrow account. And when you finally get out of the way and make a decision that just gets a little opening in there with no resistance, it all rushes in.
Yep.
Because we've been waiting for you. We're so glad you're here. The party has started, but you are not too late. Which is so beautiful. And how long ago was that?
That was in 2017, 2016, 17. Yeah, somewhere in there.
So how are things, and you don't have to answer this, but how are things, how have they played out with your son? How have things played out with your mom?
Okay, yeah. So my mom passed away, and it's all
Sorry.
good, right? I mean, it's a natural thing, right? And my son, scary, right? Because he was 18 when he was a senior, right? So he was an adult, wasn't open at all. He knew he was an adult, right? So he's like, yeah, he would come home and sleep. That was it. Like, he had his own car, he was driving, right? He had his own job. He was financially, I think he was financially independent at 16 years old. So
Mm,
like he is a very strong, independent person. So it was very fearful time because I was watching him really struggle and was very afraid. He could have graduated from high school and gone down two different paths, right? A dark one and a very light one.
right.
So he got a lead for a job doing river raft guiding
Cool.
and left for the summer. And when he came home from the summer, he only stayed at the house here one night. That was it. Regrouped, left, but he went straight to the airport. And he signed up for pilot lessons. And, we didn't know that he wanted to be a pilot. Like we had done a lot of things. There was a lot of interest in flying. There's a lot of interest. We have other pilots in our family. So we didn't know. We didn't even know that he was interested in that. He skipped college, didn't even bother with it, went straight to the airport. And now within, I would say, months, he had turned himself around. He was focused. He was motivated. He was doing his passion. He was doing the thing that fulfilled him. And he loved doing the hard work because that's what we love doing when we're in those moments where we love what we're doing. It doesn't matter, the work doesn't feel hard, and that kind of work refuels us. It doesn't drain us. It's not like you're having to use perseverance or willpower to get your work done, right? It's like the joy of hard work. And so yeah, he worked himself out of his depression by following his passion. He is now a bush pilot in Alaska and has
Wow.
been there for a couple of years. He's ready to move on, but it's been an amazing adventure.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm so glad I asked, and I'm so glad you answered. And I love how this prerequisite of seeing this group of artists that are redefining everything, not only did their decision and sharing of it, the ripple effect of that impacted you, but I would assume that it helped inform your mindset in how you viewed your son's choices.
Hmm.
Instead of saying, no, you must go to college, that's the only way that this is going to work. And
Yeah.
anything that you do besides that is just not even negotiable. You were able to widen your scope of what he needed, whether, forced independence, because it didn't sound like he was checking in with you for your advice, which can be so painful. And I see you in that and can't imagine. My daughter's 10. She's introverted compared to my extreme extroversion. And when she doesn't want to talk about her day at school, I'm like, oh, I only know how to talk.
Right.
Like, I don't, what do you mean you don't want to talk? I don't even, I've never uttered that string of words together.
Yeah. It's scary. It's scary because you want to connect, you want to touch base. And with my mom with Alzheimer's, that was like really hard to connect.
Right.
Really hard. So yeah.
Right. And when we only know one way, we only know our way. And when it's not their way, wow, I see you in that. How were you able to connect with your mom in ways that was meaningful for you?
So I did seek counsel, and she explained to me that I could draw pictures, and my mom responded to that. My mom was a
Mm,
prolific painter, so was my mother-in-law. So when you think about, and my husband is a musician, he's got a daytime job, but we've all been in the creative arts, and our son grew up in that. And I think that he only saw people working in their passion. He
mhm.
did.
It's
Uh,
beautiful.
my dad had a sales business, but he was very passionate about sales, and he loved what he was selling. So So I think that, he's definitely, thank goodness, he was influenced and knew to, his North Star was that to do the thing that refuels you. And so, yeah, so there was that segment of time in my life where I said no to doing that thing that fulfills me. And then when you are in that place where you lose all sense of time, just
Mhm.
love what you're doing, it's as if you are just being.
Yeah,
You're not doing, you're just like in your being.
right.
You've got ideas and insights coming in from out of the blue. You're getting more done in 30 minutes than you had in the last 3 days, right? Those kinds of moments.
100%.
You're in that positive feedback loop, like I already mentioned, like your work is not draining you. Instead, that work refuels you. And you're experiencing meaning, joy, and fulfillment. And what I just outlined for you were all of the key indicators of being in the flow state.
Say more.
So the flow state is an optimal state of mind when we feel our best and perform our best. It is a mind state. It is not a mindset. Mindset is going with the flow, right?
Mhm.
Another way people I've heard more recently use flow is to describe when they're manifesting their dreams. I'm in my flow. But this is under the umbrella of positive psychology. And positive psychology is all about taking a look at what's working well in your life, reverse engineering it so that you can create more of that goodness in your life.
Yeah.
And so there is the neuroscience of flow is such that there's a cocktail of peak performance hormones that get released into the brain. And they actually amp up the neocortex, which increases learning speed. It turns off temporarily the prefrontal cortex, and that's where your inner critic and fear can reside. So oftentimes people feel very uninhibited and very free without that inner critic talking, like your inner critic is silent. And so when you're in that, peak performance hormones are anandamide, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. And that's when we're in flow, we experience euphoria, we experience motivation, peak performance, and happiness, and sometimes all of that at the same time. So that is, in essence, when somebody is in that passionate state and you have said yes to yourself, you have let yourself get to that place, right? You haven't interrupted yourself. We interrupt ourselves all the time with, grabbing the phone to look at social media or this or that, right? There's a zillion interruptions, and interruptions are the number one killer of flow.
Mm.
But when you have said yes to yourself and you let yourself get into that juicy place, you experience all of these amazing benefits.
I love it. Okay, so how long scientifically can you sustain flow state?
Hmm. Well, usually people say, how can I get into it? Because
I want to know, how long can I stay in? Like, is it as
we,
long as a basketball game? Because
oh
Michael
yeah,
Jordan is in flow state. Like,
yes,
he's not, he's flying. Like,
yes,
you're witnessing your own life. I know music
yes,
happens for musicians. I feel like it happens for me when I'm leading a trip to France, when I'm on this podcast, when I am just like in it.
yeah,
And someone is actually, when it happens for me, when I'm being interviewed for a podcast, because when I'm the host, I'm managing
right.
like your needs. And when you stop talking, and if you give me a look that says, ask me a question, where some guests give me that look many, many times, and I'm like, oh, I've got one question. I I just want to have a conversation. And then other times like this, which I totally cut you off and I apologize,
No, that's
but I'm
good.
so interested that the conversation is just flowing and it's like setting itself up for what's next and what's next and what's next. And when I am a guest on a podcast, I'm not managing, thinking about, oh, there was a noise outside. Well, my producer is going to need to do which magic thing she does, or what am I Do I
Right.
have
That's distracting.
I
Those are
know,
the
right? Like
interruptions.
all the details.
Yeah.
But if I'm the guest, I'm just answering questions and they're asking me about my dreamy barn life or leading trips to France. Like, I got you. I could talk about this all day long.
So let's switch roles right now.
Okay.
I'm going to walk you through 3 questions. So if you want to increase the amount of time that you spend in flow, if you can define how you uniquely get into flow, then that becomes information, right? If you can define it, you own it. And there's a quote in my book. Let's see if I can remember how to say this the way I wrote it in the book. It's, oh, if you dream it, you can be it. But if you experience it, you can repeat it.
Yes, please.
So we want to take your flow state that you experience when you are being interviewed and figure out let's define that, okay? And I'm going to walk you through 3 prompts. Just so
Okay.
you know, you can do this as you're listening for yourself. It does start with a memory of a time when you were in flow, and you had one just now, which is why we're going to reverse, that's that positive psychology piece, right? We're going to reverse engineer it so that we can figure out one of the ways that you uniquely get into flow. So you do have to remember a time when you were in flow, and how you do that is you remember when you lost all sense of time, you feel one with the activity, ideas and insights are coming in from out of the blue, things are coming together with the sense of ease, you're in this positive feedback loop and you're experiencing that meaning, joy, and fulfillment. And oftentimes you're exceeding your own potential, like you're going beyond what you thought, or things are being pulled out of you, that kind of feeling. So when you have a memory of a time when you were in flow, you can ask these 3 questions I'm going to ask Wendy right now. So where are you is the first question. You're just locating it. So I imagine you're right where you are right now
That's right.
at your podcast station, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then the what question, the next question is what. So the first question is where. Second question is what. What are you doing? So this is 2-part question. What are you doing on the outside? You're being interviewed on a
Yes.
podcast, okay? But the real question is what are you doing on the inside?
Right. So do you want me to answer that?
Let me give you a couple examples before, okay? So for example, I was working with the chief operating officer of a medical center. Where she gets into her flow state the most is in her office. What she's doing on the outside is having one-on-one conversations with people. But what she's doing on the inside is putting aside her thoughts and deeply listening, okay? That's what it feels like for her.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, let's say what they're doing is working on an Excel spreadsheet, right? What they're doing on the inside could be any number of things. It's what makes most sense to you. You could be visualizing, you could be strategizing, you could be problem solving, right? It could be any number of these things. So we're looking, for words that end in ing, like what is the activity that you're doing on the inside when you are being interviewed?
I think I am recalling the process that I've most recently been in that moved me from a person that was saying yes to everybody else to being the woman who says yes to herself. And so when I recall those, it's just been a relatively short journey of about 4 years, maybe 4.5 years. And when someone asks me, what did I do? And I can say, I started a morning routine. I highly curated my community. I invested in myself in coaching. And I created a personal mantra that is, I am only available for what delights me. And I know that if these dreams are in me, these dreams are for me. And God is not mean. And then I can just go
Yes.
off. We can be, do, and have anything we desire. And if that person nods, I'm in it.
Then it's it. That's it. Recalling is what you're doing on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
Because, we'll get to that in a second. Okay. And what you're recalling is the experience of going from no to myself to yes to myself, right? So why is recalling? So that's the third question. The third question is why. It's a why question. And we've all heard of the why question so many times. When I'm talking about the why question, I'm looking at the highest values that are beyond yourself, the things that bring out the best in you, the things that pull you forward, right? So it's the pursuit of perhaps it's freedom or joy or peace or well-being or self-actualization, expansion, right? Whatever those whys are for you. So why is that so meaningful for you?
It reminds me of what's possible. It reminds me of the trajectory I've been on. It reminds me that my commitment to myself is real. And it reminds me that this glorious goodness and expansion is not just for me. And I want to invite other people to step in to know what is available for them as well.
So the two things that really popped out for me is possibility, and it's not just self-expansion, it's spreading that it's like oh gosh, what is it? Expansion squared, right? It's for you, it's for others, and then it's the ripple
The
effect,
ripple
right?
effects. Yep,
Yeah. So does that resonate with you?
totally.
Okay. So I'm just going to review really quickly. The three questions are, and don't worry, I have a worksheet for everybody to figure out their own flow strategy. But first
Perfect.
question is where? Where are you when you get into the flow state the most? What are you doing on the outside and the inside? Why? Why is it so meaningful? What you do on the inside, for you, it's recalling, is your most compelling internal self motivator.
Mm,
And when you define that for yourself, you know how to actually turn on. If you're having an off day, you're like, okay, let me get into that vibe where I'm recalling. And then why it's so meaningful is creating possibility and not only expansiveness for yourself, but for the ripple effect of expansiveness, right? That's like, wow, that gives me chills, right? When you know why it's so meaningful and what you're doing on the inside, you basically know the nugget of your flow strategy. So you're having an off day and you're like, oh, how am I going to turn this around? It could be as simple as, okay, what can I recall about this? Or closing your eyes, putting your hands on your heart and thinking about, okay, the possibility, the expansion, my gosh, the ripple effect that's infinite, right? That feeling of infinite is so powerful. And then you can get back on track much quicker.
I love it.
So
Thank you.
tell us what insights you have from figuring out your flow strategy.
I love that process makes the accessibility just, it streamlines accessibility. I love that. I love that because I was just interviewed for a podcast before I opened our call, it was really fresh because I think I would have said holding space for other people and their dreams is what puts me in flow state. And I think it's actually reminding myself what I already know puts me in flow state. And in that flow state is my invitation to hold space for other people and their dreams.
Mm, interesting. So that's a huge insight.
So glad this is recorded.
And how do you see this helping you going forward? What would be different?
Um, my listeners know this is how you know I'm not lying. I'm going to expand my platform for impact to more people.
Mm, wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. She's taken off her glasses for those of you who can't see, dabbing her eyes, grabbing the Kleenex. Oh.
Thank you.
I think that there are lots of different flow strategies that we have. I have one for performing, I've got one for writing music, I've got one for gardening. They're all different. And you may have some flow strategies that are through lines in your life. But like you said, you might have one for here, one for there. So I think that when you can define what your flow strategy is, then it does become useful. Like I said, when you can experience it, you can repeat it. And so you've had experiences of flow. How can you cue yourself up to repeat that even more in your life? So I am now passing the interview mic back to you, and you can get back to interviewing me.
I love that. You taught a man to fish, right? Well,
Yes.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
What a gift. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm so happy you wrote a book. Tell us about that and how, what the catalyst for the book, why this book, and who is it for? Besides me, because obviously.
Well, the book is for everyone, for those of us who are self-employed in our own businesses, we're taught to niche down, niche down, niche down, and absolutely not. For me, I have a niche topic. I do help people to get into their flow state and bring out the best in themselves, and oftentimes go beyond what they thought capable. That's what I do. But we're all wired. We're all wired to be in flow. Even neurodivergent people get into flow. So I don't have a niche audience. Okay. So this book is written for everyone.
Okay.
Also, the other thing is that the other flow books that exist right now are very nerdy. Some of them are very edgy and masculine. They're for peak performance. They're for athletes. They're for, right? But
Sure.
everyone experiences flow. Like I said, it could be an Excel spreadsheet, right? It could be, in a meeting, right? It could be, doing anything, right? Anything you can find flow in. So this book is kind of like a for the people point of view. How can we talk
Love
about
it.
this in plain English? And what are some specific systems that you can have? And I just gave you one of the two that I primarily talk about, which is figuring out your own unique way of getting into flow. This has been something I've been doing for a very long time. And it's always been through talking or working with people, coaching, or when I was teaching violin, I would teach all my little violin students how to get into the music, which is getting into the flow state. And so, and because of that, these kids would get to their violin recitals and rock.
Yeah.
So, like having that ability to tap into whatever you're doing and just rock it
Mhm.
is something I've been doing for decades. But when you write it down, the fact that it's tangible now, like it's mind blowing. I have throughout the process of creating this book, I have cried many times when it's like, wow. And there's somebody who contributed to my book who was a Yale law professor for I think over 30 years. And in our conversation, she said, if I hadn't written, she's retired now, and she said, if I hadn't written the two books that I wrote, I think I would feel like it's as if I was it never happened, right? Because
Oh
there,
gosh.
you know what I mean?
It's her legacy.
Yeah. So that's like I felt like this whole book writing process has been like, wow, to get this out of my head, out of the talk and into paper, it really is like, wow, it takes it to a whole new level. It's been a
Sure.
moving experience of saying yes to yourself.
Hey, did you, it sounds like it, so I just want to make sure that I'm capturing this. Did you enjoy the process?
So I had a lot of different people give me different advice.
Mhm.
One person was like, yeah, just write 250 words a day. And I was like, no, I know myself. That ain't going to do it. I need to immerse myself. So when you asked me that question, how long can you stay in flow? Hours. I knew that that's how I would have to do it. So I actually wrote it because I wasn't doing research on this book.
Sure.
It was all inside me. So I actually sat down and wrote it between December 15th and January 1st, just, yeah, a few months
I
ago.
love that for you.
Just total
That gives me
focus,
chills. I love it.
completely like I knew that I just had to only do that.
Did you leave your home? I mean,
No,
that's a tough time to leave your home.
no,
Okay.
no.
Wow.
I did it. We have a big screen, a 64-inch screen, so I was able to do it like I could project my computer onto it and have it nice and big in front of me, and I just went to town. Now, after that, there's been all the layout and all of the editing. That has been very challenging, and I've been supported by a great team of people, and they brought the best out of me. So it was hard work, but it was rewarding. Like I said earlier, right? It's the work of joy, even though it was definitely challenging me. And I do want to talk about challenges, but did you have another question first?
No, 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 go.
Okay.
I'm anything you want to say, I want to hear.
Aw, I think Wendy and I are like, okay, you're not my new best friend, right?
Totally. I love it.
So,
I love that these strangers are vetting my beautiful community on my behalf. It's fantastic.
so I shared with you my unique thought leadership on how to get into flow, which is defining your flow strategy so that you can use it over and over again. But the psychologist who did the most intensive research into flow, his name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he has a universal entry point into flow for anybody who wants to get into flow. And I would love to see if we can get your listeners into flow right now. Does that sound
Ooh,
good?
fun. Yes, please.
Okay. So here's how we're going to roll.
Okay.
For those of you who can't see us, I have my violin. It's an electric violin, and it's plugged into our system here. So I have some music, foundation line of music already recorded. We're going to do something to that music. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some challenges. I'm going to ask you to do some activities, and I'm going to give you some challenges. It's meant to be challenging on purpose because
Okay.
we want to stretch you, and stretching you is one of the ways to get into flow. So if you just listen to this, you're not going to get the experience. You have to actually do it to experience it. So what it's going to look like is clapping to the music, moving your body, right? If you cannot do that right now because you're, in public or, whatever,
Driving.
wherever you are driving, you can tap your finger, okay? You can do it discreetly. Just find your own way to do it, but I will be talking about clapping. So I'm going to ask you to clap to the music, which is like, okay, well, fine, I can clap to the music, right? But I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to show you other things that you could do to clap into the music. And then afterwards, when we finish, I'll give you two or three or four challenges along the way. You're going to have an experience. When it gets challenging, you might feel like it's falling apart a little bit, but then you're going to rise to the occasion. So it's kind of meant to be a little bit of a roller coaster. And the best way to go through this is to have a neutral mind, to just observe, just follow the directions, and then you will observe what's going on within you. And then afterwards, we're going to have a quick conversation to see, I'm going to ask you some questions to see to what degree you were in flow or out of flow, and then talk about why that worked. Okay, that was a long explanation. Here's the music. So you could just listen and keep in mind the technology and the sound and my motions, they might not be in sync, but as long as you can hear the violin part, you can do this. Okay, so I'm going to clap, but you could just listen. I'm going to count you in. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. Keep clapping, keep going. So I'm going to give you your first challenge. You just keep clapping. To deepen your focus, I want you to observe something. So you're clapping with the violin. I just want you to notice, are you clapping right with it, a split second before or a split second after? Keep that level of focus while I'm talking and keep the observation going. I want your head to join in now. Maybe it's a little head bounce or a nod. And I want you to notice, are you right with the violin? Split second before, split second after, just observe. Keep going. Time to add the foot. Doesn't matter, right foot or left foot. Keep observing. Are you right with the violin? Split before, split after. So you're in your own bubble listening to this podcast, and you're doing your own part. But guess what? Thousands of other people are also listening to this and doing the same thing. So while each of you are doing your own part, I want you to just imagine that you're doing it with a lot of other people. And we've all heard of the concept of oneness. And in a way, we're experiencing that right now. So, the final challenge is I'm going to play a melody that you have never heard before. And your job is to end the song at the exact same time that I do.
I did it! I stopped it right when you stopped.
So I'm going to ask a series of questions to see to what degree you are in flow or out of flow. And the first question is did you lose a sense of time? And how you would know that is maybe the time felt like it went by really quickly, or maybe it went by slowly, but in a good way. So just notice what that was for you. And then the next question is did you lose a sense of self? And how you would know that is the quieter your inner critic, the more deeper you were in flow. Maybe your inner critic was screaming. Maybe it kind of went in and out. Just notice what was going on. And then, did you find the added challenges satisfying in some way? Just answer that for yourself. And did the concept of oneness take it to a whole new level? So first of all, the skills that we were using were clapping, focusing, and deep listening. The challenges were just observing. If you're clapping, you're nodding, and your foot, right, we're with the violin a little bit before, a little bit after, and then ending the song at the same time. Those were the challenges. And the concept of oneness was the purpose. So according to Csikszentmihalyi, at the intersection of skill and challenge is the universal entry point into flow. So think about it. A skill without a challenge, not going to ignite anything. A challenge without skill, not going to ignite anything. It's the two together that brings out the best in all of us, and that's what ignites flow. And when you add purpose, it just takes it to a whole new level. So if you imagine a Venn diagram with three circles, skill, challenge, purpose, that intersection is what's going to ignite flow. So if you are perhaps in the middle of something and you are challenged, right? You might want to stop and say, is this, and it's to the point where you cannot function, right? It's way too challenging. Then you have to just kind of stop and assess. Can I break this challenge down in smaller challenges, right? Do I have the right skills? Use this skill, challenge, purpose. Am I in my purpose? Use this as a lens to look through, okay? One woman at an event that I spoke to, she said, learning a new skill is a challenge. Purpose keeps you motivated. But once you have that skill honed, you have to replan. You have to find perhaps new challenges and new purposes. And to put this in practical terms, I'll give you like a really practical example. I am not a procrastinator except for when it comes to my email inbox. Super simple. Like I am way skilled to answer my emails. I will challenge myself to do it within a time period. I give myself a deadline, literally. And for some reason that works. It ignites it for me. And then I usually find purpose along the way because I'm, communicating with people. So tell me, what are your thoughts about all of that, Wendy? That was a lot of information.
I loved it. And I do want to say, I was excited that I stopped when you stopped, but I wasn't looking at you. I had to close my eyes because I needed to focus. So I really appreciated that. And there was no inner critic.
Interesting.
And maybe because I'm the boss of this thing, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not at a coffee shop, like trying to pretend I'm not doing something that no one's
Yeah.
watching me, or
Right.
I'm not in a critical space.
Right.
So that's fascinating. And I love so much of that. I love the Venn diagram idea of it and how you can lay that on top of anything that we're doing. So
Yes.
you are not just experiencing flow when you are playing the violin. Like
Correct.
you experienced it when you wrote your book. You experience when you are cooking Thanksgiving for your family, whatever the
Right.
things are. I was thinking, I identified that area where I am in flow, but I also come out of retirement once a year to plan someone's wedding. And I just had a wedding last weekend that I worked with that client for 14 months and I slayed. I'm so proud of I did that for 30 years and I've been in retirement and I
Yes.
owned that event.
Yes.
I brought my gifts. I don't want to take on that profession again, but it felt really good. Over the 2 days, I worked 28 hours. Over the 2 days, I walked 23 miles for a wedding.
Yeah.
Not the Camino.
Yeah. I believe it.
Next year, right? So it was, I love that this helps that I'm not flighty. I'm multi-passionate. I do have the capability and the ability to be in flow state as I choose.
I think you're perceiving that you're in flow more than you realized.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I'm only available for what delights me. So that makes sense.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. That was really good. And you said more things and I had more insight, but I got off on my wedding tangent. So, yes, and I liked what you said about the woman saying how you need to redefine and rehone where these things are. And I did remember what I was going to say. Are you familiar with Dan Sullivan's work and
No.
so he wrote this, well, his teachings inspired a book called Who, Not How. And it talks about being in your gifts. And so he has these great principles, but he's not interested in writing a book. So someone else wrote the book on his principles, because the whole premise is who can do this, not how can I get this done. And when you mentioned procrastination about your inbox, he says that procrastination is your inner intelligence telling you that somebody else should do this on your behalf. Isn't that gorgeous insight?
That is saying yes to yourself on a whole new level.
I know. With permission from a
Oh,
best-selling
wow.
author. Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
I know, right? My pleasure. Yeah, it's beautiful work. And I like that takes the whole thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a woman. My conditioning says I need to make myself feel terrible about the things I'm procrastinating about. And this magic human says, oh, no, that's just your inner knowing.
I have a full circle moment.
Please.
The first thing I talked about today was saying yes to myself with my exercise and up leveling it. I recognized I was on a plateau. And so what I learned from my trial lesson yesterday was a new level of challenge. Because obviously I was not going to grow without the challenge. I had the skill, I needed the challenge. What's missing probably is purpose, because the purpose I have is like a little too practical. But I will think about like a higher level of purpose with regards to that and set my intention. I have my next trial session on Monday, and then I'll probably, buy the package, but super
Perfect.
excited. So
Yeah, I'm excited for you. And I loved that it's a hybrid, which of coaching and the exercise
yeah.
program. And I loved because that's what you're doing. You have this hybrid of performance and speaking. And I think you just say yes to more than one thing at a time all the time. Oh, I have loved this conversation. I have to say, time went much faster than I feel like it normally passes. Thank you so much. Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, where they can get the book, all the good things.
Yeah, we'll have some links in the show notes. So
Absolutely.
the first thing is I have a gift, which is basically I have a lot of resources on a web page. I have the flow strategy worksheet. I have outlines of everything we talked about today, as well as a couple videos that will support you. It's not an overwhelming amount of material. It's very succinct, and you could probably go through it in 30 minutes, all of it, and have everything that we talked about. And then we'll have the link to my book,
Yes.
and super excited about that. You can find me at Diane Allen Speaker on socials. So I usually hang out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you. That is so generous of you. And yes, of course,
Thank
we
you.
will link everything down in the show notes. I can't wait to talk to you again. It
We should
can't
do a
be just
sequel.
one time.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Diane.
Thank you, Wendy.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.